The Supreme Court has always navigated deep American controversies. In fact, when you go to law school, it is both common and at times downright cliched to refer to how the court doesn't have its own army or police force to back up its rulings. It doesn't have the following and the intense passion and support of most politicians. What the court draws on, we're told, besides its technical authority, is a type of legitimacy. Legitimacy. Now, if you're watching the news right now going, I'm not sure about that, well, that's the focus of our report right now. The impact of this decision that guts Roe will continue to be important to many people for its direct, consequential force on their life, its impact, and we're going to keep covering that as we did at the top of the hour. But then there is also what this decision that is such an undeniably big deal that will be taught in law school and history for a long time to come. What does this actually mean for the court itself? It's facing this mainstream nonpartisan rebukes already in publications like, take, for example, USA Today's front page, which raises the obvious issue here, not from a left or right perspective, but just from an American view of, wow, once you do this fast with a bunch of new Trump appointees, the court's legitimacy is, quote, in question after this ruling. The nationwide protests that we're living through right now, they're not simply logging a generalized disagreement with the outcome. Much of this is also tapping into what is now a prevailing view, that this decision came out because new justices joined the court, and they personally oppose abortion. Now, let me be clear. If the sentence I just said sounds obvious, Trump put people on the court, they voted to reverse the precedent because they oppose it. If it sounds obvious, remember, that is what they currently deny. The court's legitimacy requires that it never does that it doesn't just reverse what is law, precedent, constitutional rights because new people are voted on and they just personally disagree. Its legitimacy comes from being above personal opinions in politics, let alone a judge's personal religious views. Again, you might think, yeah, Ari, should be obvious, but I just want to spell it out. If the court just did that, if justices joined and just ruled on their, say, religious views, however earnestly held, then the Supreme Court would become an unaccountable super legislature that would just mandate everyone has to observe the Sabbath or go to church, or if you got enough really strong Jewish believers on there, that everyone has to keep kosher, because that's what its members think. Now, as we noted on Friday, Justice Alito strenuously disagrees with that. He claims that he and this 5-justice majority are literally neutral on abortion, no views whatsoever, and that's not why they ruled. Yet he also claims, quote, Roe was egregiously wrong from the day it was decided. That's a bold statement. Legally, what he's saying is not that new facts or information change something, which can happen in precedent. What he's saying is, since this ruling came down in 73, it has always been legally wrong. That's sort of, legally speaking, the highest threshold for claiming that something's got to be overturned. The most classic example is on matters of race, where many people a long time ago literally believed in the differences of the races as a matter of law, and now the court says not only were they wrong then, but that's always been the wrong view. Now, this Alito claim was just dissected by one of the national experts on the Supreme Court in our entire lifetime, journalist Linda Greenhouse, New York Times Supreme Court reporter for decades. And she notes in a new piece that this is the first time the court has rescinded an individual right and left it up to the states, something that used to be, according to the court, protected by the Constitution. Now, again, I'm keeping it as blunt and clear as possible. These things are linked. The fact that the court is being perceived by everyone as making a sudden change as soon as it got Trump appointees on who have a view of abortion, that perception against what Alito is claiming, that he needs people to believe something else. He needs everyone to believe that this decision was always wrong from the start. As Greenhouse points points out, that would also mean, however, that so many past Republican-appointed justices who backed Roe would also have been wrong from the start.
The 14th Amendment defines person, and it defines person as somebody who's born, doesn't it?
I'm not sure about that.
When you quote Blackstone, is it not true that in Blackstone's time, abortion was not a felony?
That's true, Your Honor, but what my point there was to see the thinking of the framers of the Constitution.
I'm just wondering if there's basic inconsistency there.
That's just a little bit of what it sounded like when they were actually adjudicating and hearing this case originally. Republican presidents appointed much of the Roe majority. Those were some of them discussing these issues in the oral arguments in '72. And it was, back then, a 7-2 decision. The vast majority of justices on a Supreme Court, who were all men at the time, we should note, as we discussed gender issues, voting for Roe, 5 appointed by Republicans. And Greenhouse stresses this in her New York Times piece responding to Friday's ruling, noting that Alito saying all of those justices were so blatantly, obviously wrong in that decision as well as over time is, quote, breathtakingly arrogant. Now, numbers show that 1 in 4 women have an abortion by age 45 in America. But this doesn't even impact all women equally. Experts, as we've noted from the top of the show, say women of color are most impacted. Professor Melissa Murray, who's been a guest here, says for women of color, poor women, women who lack the resources to travel, well, for them, it's especially grim. Quote, really grim, she says. For black women who already have a maternal mortality rate triple that of white women, the ruling could increase those numbers by 1/3. But none of this is new. Just as so many people have lived through this, some of the Supreme Court experts have as well. And Greenhouse, in this essay, which is at times personal, draws on her own history, her own career, and notes that before Roe, in 1970, quote, more than 90% of the legal abortions in New York hospitals were performed on white women, while non-white women account for a large proportion of the deaths from bungled, illegal abortions. She was reporting on that over 50 years ago and quoted a lawyer who told her it is the poor women who have to pay. Greenhouse noted a forthcoming court challenge could bring the striking down of all anti-abortion laws in the U.S. She wrote that in '70, 3 years later, Roe did come down. And now, 50 years later, while some things have changed, the point there, the grim point, is that when it comes to class and equality and discrimination, some things have not changed at all. And that is far worse news for certain people in America. Now joining us is the aforementioned reporter and author of some of that work, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Linda Greenhouse, who covered the Supreme Court for the New York Times for many years, and Joan Walsh, a national affairs correspondent for The Nation and friend of the beat. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Harry. I really appreciated that opening. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate. I'm always careful who am I speaking for. I think there's evidence a lot of people appreciate your work, and your essay walks through so much there. So, given that setup, why don't you tell us what was important to you to convey? Because, as we always say, people of goodwill, people who are trying to do things right, may disagree on issues, and yet what you document is a deeper problem in the court's very legitimacy right now.
I think what we see in this opinion really is what I call breaking the fourth wall. If you know the image of the fourth wall, that when we go to theater, we know we're just seeing a play. We're not seeing people really acting out their lives. And we accept that, we accept that the Supreme Court is populated by people who get there through politics, named by a president, confirmed by a Senate, come from the heartland of America's political life often. And, we're cool with that. There's kind of a bargain. We, the public, have made a bargain with the Supreme Court. We accord you legitimacy to exercise the enormous power that you have, as long as you're staying in the kind of mainstream of Americans' understanding of the principles that we live by. What the court did with the Dobbs opinion, the Mississippi abortion case, is break the fourth wall, enabling us to look at them clearly, as you did in your opening, and say, hey, wait a minute. But the overwhelming popular sentiment in the country is, don't do this. We may disagree about when someone should have an abortion or different aspects of abortion. But at the end of the day, a very strong majority of the American public wants this to be an option. And the court giving really no reason, as you said. You know, the court has overturned precedent many times in its history, often to expand our notion of rights, as when Brown against Board of Education overturned Plessy, as you said, or at least to clarify rights or take account of some new information, this kind of thing. If you read the Dobbs majority opinion, the Alito opinion, which, by the way, is virtually identical to the draft that was leaked 2 months ago, I urge people to read it. Read it and look for women. Look for any acknowledgement in that opinion that this decision is going to have any impact on women. It's astonishing women are not there. So, you know, I think that the court has broken its half of the bargain with, I think, devastating consequences for the way Americans think about the Supreme Court.